The case of the Menendez brothers has resurfaced, drawing strong opinions from both sides, even after more than 3 decades. In today's video, we'll take a deep dive into the layers of this case, one that keeps evolving with new evidence, strong emotions, and moral debates. Are Lyle and Erik Menendez victims of abuse, pushed to commit an unthinkable act, or are they simply criminals who used a fabricated narrative to cover their crime? Stick around because we'll be exploring all sides, and by the end, you might have a very different view of this infamous case. Let's start with the pro-Menendez perspective. Many of their supporters believe that Lyle and Erik were victims of horrific abuse at the hands of their father, Jose Menendez. This claim isn't new, as it was central to their defense during their trial in the 90s. The brothers detailed years of physical and sexual abuse, which they said led them to murder their parents in a desperate act of self-defense. This argument held enough weight in their first trial, resulting in a hung jury. Fast forward to today, and new evidence is giving this narrative a fresh push. Recent Netflix documentaries have shed light on audio tapes and letters that further support the brothers' claims of abuse. One significant piece of evidence is a letter Erik Menendez wrote to his cousin before the murders, detailing the abuse he was enduring. Then, there's testimony from a former Menudo and member who claims to have been abused by Jose Menendez, further adding credibility to Erik and Lyle's story. With all this, supporters are rallying behind the idea that justice wasn't properly served and that the abuse narrative wasn't given enough consideration in their second trial, where they were ultimately convicted. However, not everyone is convinced. On the other side, we have those who are deeply skeptical of the brothers' abuse claims. They point to the brutality of the murders as a clear sign that this was no act of desperation. The fact that Lyle and Erik shot their parents multiple times and then went on an expensive shopping spree in the days following the killings raises doubts. Critics argue that these are not the actions of terrified, abused sons, but of cold-blooded killers motivated by greed. After all, their parents were wealthy, and the brothers stood to inherit millions. For many, this feels like a classic case of manipulation, where the abuse claims are being used as a convenient defense to shift the narrative away from their actual crime. So where does that leave us? As a neutral observer, it's impossible to ignore the complexity of this case. It's not as black and white as some might want it to be. Could the Menendez brothers have been victims of abuse and still guilty of murder driven by financial motives? Absolutely. Both things can be true at the same time. This new evidence certainly gives us more context, but it doesn't change the fact that two people were murdered in a horrific way. The court system will have to weigh this evidence carefully as they decide whether to resent the brothers or not. Now, as viewers, we're left to question, how much should new evidence, decades later, influence a case that once seemed closed? Should we reconsider their life sentences based on these revelations, or is this simply another ploy to reduce their punishment? One thing's for sure, this story is far from over, and it's not just about the brothers anymore. It's about how our justice system handles claims of abuse, manipulation, and power. As always, I want to know your thoughts. Do you believe Lyle and Erik Menendez are victims who deserve another shot at justice, or are they master manipulators who should remain behind bars? Let me know in the comments. And if you want to stay updated on the latest developments in this case, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. You won't want to miss what's coming next in this saga.